Hey everybody, I hope everyone's having a great day today. This is another story time, which I'm going to try to drop a story time every week around this time. So be on the lookout for future ones that are coming up. So in this video, I wanted to discuss the cycle and how it continued. So in this relationship that I encountered, this man was like my best friend. Like, he was my best friend, my confidant. I can talk to him about anything and he would give really good advice. I respected this man because of all his accomplishments and accolades and just how he carried himself, how he was so confident. And that really gave me something to look forward to. Like, that right there, was like, wow, I've never really met a man like this for myself, you know what I mean? So I was intrigued by that. And I would talk to him about any and everything. Like, he knew my background, he knew what I encountered in my last relationship, and he witnessed a couple things. But yeah, when I say I thought this man was it for me, I thought he was it for me. And he was my protector. Like, he taught me how to be age appropriate. He taught me about credit. He taught me about the credit score. He taught me about real estate and just all these things, right? So I kind of felt like, oof, this is a blessing, like, wow, Lord, thank you. I'm worthy. I'm worthy of this. You know what I mean? But anyway, to make the long story short, this is where I found out about that bait and switch situation too. And side note, everything that I post, everything that I talk about, this is not something that I learned from people. This is something that I actually experienced in my own personal life, which makes me qualified to talk about it because I went through the emotions of it. I went through the healing process of it. I went through the scars that it left behind. I went through just everything that I've encountered, I went through it personally. So it hits home. So that was my side note. But anywho, with all that being said about this man, like, he baited me in good. Like, I learned about his accolades. I learned about, haters. And I witnessed a couple things when it comes to him talking about, haters and how people didn't support him and stuff like that. So, I felt some empathy, towards him, and it made me draw closer to him. And I supported this man like I've never supported anybody before. Like, in my last relationship, I was the breadwinner, of course, and but I also learned about survival, and that's key when it comes to the next video, which I'm going to talk about regarding the things that I've learned. So even though I've encountered all these situations, they all played a part in where I am right now. So let's get back. So with that being said, the bait and switch, like, he baited me real good, and I was so intrigued. And then the little red flags started showing up. I ignored them. Some of them I was familiar with, but some of them I was not. And I'm like, this is different, And the type of respect that I had for this man, I mean, I allowed what I was learning and who I saw as my best friend, my confidant, and all these different things in him, I let that override the red flags. warning sign. Don't do that. So with that being said, I ended up, you know, going through certain things, and by him knowing what I went through before, it seemed like it became a part of how he started belittling me. Like he was starting to talk about, you know, my past and what I've encountered, and tried to use it against me in a way. And I was hurt by that, because I'm like, this is something that I told you in confidence, and I felt like, you know, you wouldn't do that to me, you know. And anyway, it ended up happening. And like I said, he was my protector, but he didn't protect me from himself. And so as the belittling started happening, you know, it started making me feel a certain type of way. And then with that came the emotional roller coaster, the emotional abuse. 1 minute I was happy, 1 minute I was sad, 1 minute I was crying, 1 minute I was depressed, 1 minute I was joyous. It's like it was just such an emotional roller coaster. And sometimes these things took place all in one setting, because that's how the conversations went. And I remember him telling me literally that he was trying to break me down to build me up, just like a muscle. You know, it has to be broken down to be built up. And so I'm like, in my head, like, why would you try to break me down? Like, why can't you just love me like I love you, you know? And I'm like, okay, I guess, you know? So then it's like I started dealing with the disrespect. You know, he was just telling me how, like, he would talk to some of his exes, and he would say that he do it because they can relate to him in an intellectual way. And I'm like, wow. So no matter how I'm telling you it made me feel, you did what you wanted to do because you wanted to do it. Apparently I wasn't fulfilling that part in your life to where you were satisfied with what I was bringing, so you ended up going elsewhere. So I got upset about that. And here's another side note too. He gave me so many experiences. Like, he was such a on-the-go person, to where it's like he do spontaneous things, and that's what intrigued me too, because we were always doing something exciting, but some of those things I wasn't really happy in because of the conversations, the eggshells that I felt like I was walking on. I had to be careful with what I said, because anything can spark, you know, that part to come out, you know what I mean, from him. And I've never relied on him financially. Anything that I've had, anything that I've done, I provided myself. So let that be something that you remember. So it started getting to the point of me supporting him, and, you know, everything was fine at that point. So with that being said, not only was I supporting him, I was like really taking care of this man. Like, I really cared for him. I really loved him. And I wanted to go the distance with him, despite how I was being mistreated, because I'm looking at what I'm learning, what I'm experiencing, the good things that I was experiencing. So that's what caused me to, you know, continue. But when those things were happening, you know, I would get sad. I would cry. And sometimes, you know, it went from me crying and him consoling me and giving me tissues and a hug or whatever. But it went from that to him saying like, why can't we have an adult conversation without you crying? And I'm like, wow, do you not realize what you're saying to me? I'm a woman. I'm emotional. That's how I'm feeling, you know? And so it went from that to him saying, you know, I don't need no weak people on my team. I mean, it was so crazy to the point where he would say, oh, you're only looking at what you've invested in it. You know, this life was big before you got in it. Everybody has a part to play. You paid your way in. I could have let that destroy me. I could have stopped altogether. But at the same time, I continued because here's the thing. One time I was hurting so bad and I went into prayer and I asked God, like, God, why is he putting me through all this stuff that he knows that I went through, you know, some similarities in the past? Why am I going through it again, you know? And I'm like crying out to God and saying, I feel like I'm not enough and I feel like I'm not doing enough. He wants me to do more and all that, right? So then it's like God told me while I was still on my knees, he said, continue doing what you're doing because your obedience is going to be rewarded. So I'm like, okay, well, God, help me to give me the strength to continue, the strength to endure, you know, because this stuff, I wasn't understanding it. I had never been through it, you know, especially when I worked as hard as I worked to take care of my children, to provide for myself, and to become financially, you know, independent. You know what I mean? Like, I felt like I'm in a place to where, why would I be treated like that? You know what I'm saying? But again, I stuck in it. I'm thinking it was going to get better. And I had a goal in mind, which we talked about marriage. And at one point he was referring to me to other people of being his fiance. And at that point, I'm like, well, why are you playing around with the word when it's not really, it ain't happening? Like, I felt like as long as I was doing what he wanted me to do, he was going to continue dangling the ring in front of my face, like, this is the prize. If you keep doing what I want you to do, this is the prize that you're going to get. And at one point, I'm like, to heck with this. I'm like, you know what? It ain't even worth it. It ain't worth it because I'm doing everything that I can possibly do. And I'm crying out. I'm letting him know how much he's hurt me in conversations, thinking that, you know, we're going to get past it. But it ended up getting worse. And I'm like, you know, I'm really trying to learn this man. And there are certain things that I just couldn't settle with because I'm like, I can't allow myself to go into a marriage to where it's going to get worse than this, because it wasn't getting better at the time. And so anywho, the straw that broke the camel's back for me was when I've invested all this time, all this money, all this support in him, and when it was time for me to invest in myself, there was no support. There was a lot of backlash. There was talks of my relationship with God being in question. There was talks about how I'm trying to be in competition with him, like I'm trying to be in control. I'm trying to come against him, and I'm like, what? Like, I'm just doing this because of us. Like, I had been in my job for years, and I only worked that job as a point of surviving, you know, to take care of my children while they were in school and stuff like that. And so I did that. So now at that time I became an empty nester, and I'm like, I want to, you know, I want to start doing stuff for myself. So I didn't really know what all that entailed, but in December of this past year, well, actually before then, months before then, you know, God had gave me a dream, and he told me exactly what to do. So I've never asked anybody for money. What happened was I ended up getting the money and investing in myself from my job. And before I pursued with any payments or anything like that, I communicated with him like, this is what God's telling me, you know, I feel good about this, and I feel like I'm getting direction, and you know, it was like the timing wasn't right. You know, we need to focus on this, we need to focus on that. And I'm like, well, that could still be the focus, but I have to do what God is calling me to do, you know. And so there was a tug of war when it came to that, because I wanted to pursue what God was telling me to pursue, but yet at the same time, I didn't want to go against what he set in stone for us to do. You know what I mean? For the goal that he, you know, set for us. And I'm like, well, in my mind, if we go by that, then it's going to prolong what God is telling me to do. And I don't want to miss out on this opportunity, you know? So, of course, I let what he said get to me, and I just, you know, didn't pursue it at that time. In January, I ended up pursuing it again, and at this point, I'm like, I'm just gonna tell him about it, because I'm gonna do it. And so I had to deal with weeks of lectures, weeks of being reprimanded, and that showed me that, okay, you don't want to see me better myself when it comes to what God is calling me to do. You want me to do what you want me to do because you want to be in control of it. And for me, I'm like, all these years I supported you. All these years I stood by you. All these years, like, I've invested in you and us. And I get no support because of timing, as you say. So that showed me, along with other things that happened that I'm not gonna, you know, talk about right now, but that let me know that, yeah, nah, this ain't it. And so with that being said, once I started investing in myself, and I seen how much tension was growing with that let me know that I was on the right track. And when I say it took God to bring all these things into my attention, because I felt like this man was it for me. And honestly, I would have gone through anything else, you know, just to satisfy the relationship, to get to that expected end. But God said, not so. Not so. Because you were created for a purpose. But that's a whole nother video too, because God has been, oh my gosh, he's been dropping so many gems, and he's been showing me how he was with me from the beginning of the last relationship, my marriage, to this point. And when I say, when I left that relationship, when I chose myself, when I did what God wanted me to do and cut that thing completely off, when I say God has been blowing my mind, Lord, He has been blowing my mind. So that's why I want to urge anybody to start choosing yourself, start investing in yourself, because you are way stronger than what you think. And sometimes we don't even see our capabilities and what we're made of when other people do, when they try to stop it. So be mindful of that. And I'm understanding more and more why I had to go through what I went through. And I'm glad that I did, because as horrible and as tragic as it sounds, there were so many blessings in it. Like, I learned a lot, you know? And so, yeah, it was crazy. It was crazy, but I never got broken down, even though I could laugh about it now, but he was saying, like, you're a tough cookie. You tough. And I'm like, why you say that? Like, you can't be broken. When you have a foundation of God and what you know about yourself that God says about you, that can never be broken, no matter how hard the enemy tries, because it's that thing that like rises up. Like the word of God says, even in our weakest moments, we are made strong. Couldn't break me. And I can smile about that now, because no matter what the enemy tried to do through him, it didn't work. It didn't work. So stay tuned for my next video, y'all. It's gonna be a video of, like I said, how God was in it all along. And when I say that God knows the plans that He has for your life, to prosper you and not harm you, to give you a hope in the future, we may not understand everything that we go through and why we go through those things, but they are to build our character, show us what we're made of, and to get us to a point like I am now. If I hadn't gone through that, I wouldn't have been able to talk to you guys about it on a personal level, you know? And my passion is real, because it took me to go through all those hardships, all those lectures, all those belittlings, all those disrespectful moments and times, all those cheating times, for me to find out how strong I was and I cannot be broken no matter what. And that God has a plan for my life. He's causing it all to work out for my good. God's doing some stuff with me, and He wants to do some stuff with you, but you have to choose yourself. Keep that in mind. Until next time, God bless.